Drake Salvati was a man who believed power was measured by control. From his penthouse overlooking the city skyline, he watched the world like a chessboard, people mere pawns in his game. Nothing intrigued him more than human nature, especially when tested at its limits. The Mafia boss twirled his crystal glass, amber liquid catching the morning light as he contemplated his latest scheme. 4 black credit cards with unlimited funds, the perfect test of character for 4 women who had no idea they were being evaluated for something far beyond money. "Bring them to me," he commanded, his voice barely above a whisper, as his right-hand man nodded silently. Drake had selected each woman carefully. Different backgrounds, different motivations, but all connected to his empire in ways only he fully understood. That evening, his expansive marble office hosted 4 nervous women, seated before his imposing mahogany desk. The air felt thick with tension, as Drake's calculating gaze assessed each face, searching for weaknesses, for tells, for the truth beneath carefully composed expressions. "Ladies," he began, sliding a sleek black box across the polished surface. "Inside are 4 identical credit cards with no spending limit. Each of you will receive one, with absolutely no restrictions on how you use it." His lips curved into a smile that never reached his cold eyes. Clarissa, the socialite whose family had fallen from grace, leaned forward eagerly, manicured fingers twitching with barely contained excitement. Her designer dress couldn't hide her desperation to reclaim her former status, making her predictable in Drake's eyes. Beside her sat Veronica, the ambitious lawyer who handled the legitimate side of his business empire. Her sharp eyes narrowed with suspicion, already calculating angles and consequences, wondering what hidden claws might be lurking behind this unusual offer. Jasmine, his former flame, maintained a perfect poker face that couldn't quite hide the bitter resentment simmering beneath her beautiful features. Their relationship had ended abruptly when he discovered her secret agenda, yet he kept her close, fascinated by her capacity for vengeance. The final recipient sat slightly apart from the others, Maria, his unassuming maid whose quiet efficiency had caught his attention over the past year. Unlike the others, she showed no visible reaction to his offer, her simple clothes and downcast eyes masking whatever thoughts might be spinning behind them. "You have 1 month," Drake announced, watching each woman accept a card with varying degrees of enthusiasm. "No questions asked, no explanations required. Use it as you wish, but know that I'll be watching your choices with great interest." He dismissed them with a wave of his hand. As the women filed out, his security chief approached with a tablet displaying 4 separate tracking systems. "Everything's in place, boss. We'll monitor every transaction, every movement, just as you requested. The technology would follow their every purchase, every decision." Drake nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression as he returned to the window overlooking his domain. The experiment had begun, the pieces were in motion, and soon he would know which woman, if any, deserved a place in his inner circle, and perhaps, in his succession plan. What would you do with unlimited wealth and no apparent consequences? Would money reveal your true character, or merely amplify what was already there? Drake was betting on the latter as night fell over the city he controlled through fear, money, and blood-soaked loyalty. What Drake didn't reveal was that this test had eliminated 3 previous candidates who had failed spectacularly, their greed and short-sightedness proving they were unworthy of his consideration. Would any of these women break the pattern, or would they follow the predictable path of self-destruction? Clarissa wasted no time, booking a private jet to Paris before she'd even left Drake's building. The black card felt like redemption in her perfectly manicured hand, a ticket back to the world of elite parties and influential connections her family had lost when her father's embezzlement scandal broke. Her first purchase, a $300,000 diamond necklace from Cartier, was calculated to announce her triumphant return to society. As she posed for selfies in her hotel suite, tagging former friends who had abandoned her, Clarissa laughed at how easily status could be bought back with the right resources. What Drake saw through his monitoring was exactly what he expected, a woman desperate to reclaim her place in a shallow world, spending on appearances rather than substance. Every transaction painted a clearer picture of someone who valued perception over reality, external validation over inner worth. Veronica approached the opportunity with methodical precision, establishing offshore accounts and investing in startups connected to Drake's rivals. Her legal mind recognized this gift as both opportunity and trap, so she created layers of protection while leveraging the unlimited funds to build her own power base. Her first major purchase wasn't for herself, but a controlling interest in a small tech company developing surveillance software. The irony wasn't lost on Drake as he watched her acquiring the very tools he was using to monitor her, admiring her strategic thinking, even as he questioned her loyalty. While she occasionally indulged in luxury, a penthouse apartment, a custom-tailored wardrobe befitting her new status, Veronica primarily treated the card as capital rather than cash. Each investment was calculated to generate return and influence, building a foundation for independence from her benefactor. Jasmine's approach revealed the darkness Drake had glimpsed during their tumultuous relationship. Her first purchase was information, hiring private investigators to dig into Drake's operations, his weaknesses, his secrets. Revenge was her currency, and she spent it liberally. She moved into the penthouse directly across from his, a deliberate provocation as she hosted lavish parties for his enemies and business rivals. Through his surveillance, Drake watched her weaving a web of alliances against him, each transaction a missile aimed at the empire he had built. In public, she maintained a facade of gratitude, sending him expensive gifts with cards signed with lipstick kisses. But Drake saw through the performance to the calculated campaign underneath. She was using his money to dismantle his reputation, his relationships, his control over the city. Maria's first transaction puzzled Drake so completely that he reviewed the footage 3 times. The maid had taken the bus to a humble neighborhood across town and purchased 200 hot dogs from a local stand. His surveillance team reported she had distributed them to homeless people sheltering under a bridge. Unlike the others, Maria maintained her regular routine, arriving early to clean his penthouse, quietly efficient as always. The card remained unused for days afterward, as though forgotten, until she made a modest deposit on a small house where his team discovered her elderly parents living in deteriorating conditions. The pattern that emerged from Maria's spending was unlike anything Drake had anticipated. Hospital bills for a child with cancer whose family she had never met, tuition for a promising student in her neighborhood, repairs for a community center damaged in a recent storm. Always for others, never for herself. Her purchases lacked the extravagance of Clarissa's, the calculation of Veronica's, or the malice of Jasmine's. Instead, they revealed a woman whose worldview extended beyond herself, whose definition of wealth had nothing to do with acquisition, or status, or power. Drake found himself increasingly fascinated. What truly stunned him was discovering Maria volunteering at a children's shelter during her limited free time, the same shelter his own organization used as a money laundering front. She was inadvertently entangled in his criminal enterprises while simultaneously undermining them with genuine compassion. Do you think Drake will change his plans based on what he's learning about these women? Would absolute power and wealth corrupt absolutely? Or could they reveal something unexpected about character? Drake found himself questioning his own assumptions as the experiment continued to unfold. 3 weeks into the experiment, Drake summoned his security chief for a comprehensive report. The monitors displayed 4 distinct patterns of behavior, 4 approaches to unlimited wealth, 4 responses to his unspoken challenge. The results were beginning to crystallize into something unexpected. Clarissa has spent approximately $12 million, primarily on status symbols and social climbing, his chief reported, displaying images of the socialite draped in designer clothing, hosting celebrities at exclusive clubs. She's burning through cash to rebuild her reputation, but making powerful enemies with her arrogance. Footage showed Clarissa berating service staff, throwing champagne at a photographer who caught her unflattering angle, buying friendship with expensive gifts that came with strings attached. Drake nodded, unsurprised by the socialite's predictable descent into entitled excess. Veronica has been more strategic, investing rather than spending, continued the report, screens shifting to complex financial diagrams and business meetings. She's positioned herself as a silent partner in 15 companies, creating a power base independent from your organization. The lawyer's calculated approach impressed Drake, even as it confirmed his suspicions about her ultimate ambitions. She was building a rival empire with his resources, making connections with politicians who could protect her if the relationship with Drake soured, always 3 steps ahead. What truly concerned him was discovering Veronica had met privately with federal agents twice in the past week. The surveillance couldn't capture what was said, but Drake recognized an insurance policy when he saw one. She was gathering leverage, protection, ammunition against the day he might turn on her. Jasmine continues her vendetta, sir, the security chief said carefully, aware of the personal history involved. She's approached 3 of your lieutenants with bribes, accessed secured areas of your casino through, seduction of your staff, and compiled a concerning amount of sensitive information. Images displayed Jasmine in intimate settings with Drake's rivals, whispering in ears, exchanging documents, building a coalition of his enemies, united by her manipulative charm. Her spending was entirely focused on undermining his position, using his own money to fund what amounted to a coup attempt. Most alarming was footage of Jasmine meeting with the brother of a man Drake had eliminated years ago, passing him an envelope that later investigation revealed contained locations of Drake's most vulnerable operations. She wasn't just seeking to embarrass him. She was orchestrating his downfall. "And Maria?" Drake asked, his voice deliberately neutral, as the screens shifted to his maid's activities. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. Modest purchases, humble settings, none of the luxury or manipulation that characterized the other women's choices. "Frankly, sir, she's the anomaly," admitted the security chief. "Total spending is just under $2 million, but none of it personal. Medical treatments for strangers, housing for displaced families, scholarship funds for underprivileged students. She's essentially created a private charity with your money." The most recent footage showed Maria sitting beside a hospital bed, reading to a child undergoing chemotherapy. "We identified the boy. No relation to her, just someone she met while volunteering. She's paid his entire treatment plan and visits him daily during her lunch break." Drake leaned forward, studying the gentle interaction with unexpected intensity. "Has she made any purchases for herself? Anything at all?" His question revealed more interest than he intended, causing his security chief to look at him with subtle surprise. "Just one, sir. A silver locket containing a photo of her parents." The chief hesitated before adding, "She wears it under her uniform while cleaning your home. It cost $87, the only personal item she's bought with unlimited resources at her disposal." Do you think Drake is starting to see something in Maria that's changing his perspective? Has the experiment revealed more about the Mafia boss than about his test subjects? The lines between observer and observed were blurring, as Drake found himself increasingly drawn to the mystery of the woman who wanted nothing for herself. Drake decided to observe Clarissa in person, attending a gala she had organized at the city's most exclusive hotel. From across the champagne-drenched room, he watched her holding court among celebrities and business elites, all purchased with his black card. Her laughter rang hollow as she flitted between influential figures. What struck him most was the desperation beneath her polished veneer, the way her eyes constantly scanned the room to ensure she was being noticed, the slight tremor in her hand as she clinked glasses with a famous director. Unlimited wealth had only amplified her insecurities rather than curing them. "Darling, isn't this divine?" She gushed upon spotting Drake, air-kissing near his cheek, while photographers captured the moment. "Everyone who matters is here tonight, all talking about my miraculous comeback to society." Her words carried the scent of expensive champagne and validation addiction. Drake played along, offering practiced charm while studying how others responded to her. Behind the smiles and flattery, he detected calculation in every interaction, people using her as she used them, a carousel of mutual exploitation spinning to music only the privileged could hear. Later that evening, he overheard Clarissa in a heated phone conversation with her estranged father. "They're all fawning over me now, Daddy," she hissed, mascara-stained tears threatening her perfect makeup. "You said I'd never recover from your scandal, but look who's back on top while you rot away." The venom in her voice revealed wounds deeper than Drake had anticipated, family trauma festering beneath designer dresses and diamond accessories. Her spending wasn't just about status. It was revenge against a father who had fallen from grace and taken her identity with him. When Clarissa spotted a former friend who had abandoned her during her family's disgrace, she immediately purchased the woman's company through a hostile takeover, using Drake's black card to fund the acquisition. By morning, she had fired her former friend and sent a champagne basket with a note. "Remember me now?" What fascinated Drake was how quickly power corrupted someone already damaged by its loss. In mere weeks, Clarissa had transformed from social climber to tyrannical gatekeeper, using her newfound resources to punish those who had wronged her and control those who hadn't. Her final purchase with the black card was perhaps the most revealing. She bought the childhood home where her family had lived before the scandal, only to have it demolished while live-streaming the destruction to her social media followers. "The past is rubble," she declared, raising a glass as bulldozers crushed memories. Do you think Clarissa's choices with the black card reveal her true character, or just the wounds that shaped her? Drake found himself pondering this question as he watched her empire of retribution and validation grow, wondering if unlimited wealth created monsters or merely revealed them. The socialite's transformation was complete when she hosted her final event, a masquerade ball where guests were required to wear masks resembling her face, a room full of Clarissas dancing in macabre celebration of her ego. Drake observed from the shadows, decision already forming in his mind. What Clarissa failed to notice, in her rush to rebuild her social kingdom, was how each transaction was being judged, how each choice revealed more of her character than she intended. The black card wasn't just giving, it was taking away her mask, exposing the person beneath the performance. The morning after her grotesque self-celebration, Clarissa awoke to find her card declined at her hotel, her new friends suddenly unreachable, her borrowed power evaporating like morning dew. Drake had seen enough. The experiment with her was concluded, the results disappointing, but predictable. As security escorted her from the property she could no longer afford, Clarissa screamed accusations and threats that fell on indifferent ears. She had failed to understand that true power wasn't in what you could buy, but in what you could build, not in what you took, but in what you gave. Would you have made different choices with unlimited resources, or would you have followed Clarissa's path of external validation and revenge? Drake wondered how many would pass the test he had designed as he crossed the socialite's name from his list of candidates. Veronica's approach required a different method of observation, so Drake arranged a business meeting under the pretense of discussing new legitimate ventures. She arrived precisely on time, dressed in a tailored suit that spoke of authority rather than flash, her investments already visible in her confident posture. "Your generous gift has been put to good use," she began without preamble, sliding a folder across his desk containing details of her financial empire built with his black card. "I've tripled the available credit line through strategic investments and acquisitions focused on long-term growth rather than immediate returns." Unlike Clarissa, who had spent to impress others, Veronica had spent to impress herself, building a complex web of businesses that mirrored Drake's own organizational structure, but with completely legitimate operations front to back. She had created a shadow empire without a single illegal transaction. What concerned Drake was not her financial acumen, which was impressive, but her methodical compilation of insurance policies against him. The surveillance team had documented meetings with prosecutors, judges, and rival organizations, each carefully orchestrated to provide her protection. "I assume you've been monitoring my activities," Veronica stated calmly, crossing her legs as she studied his reaction. "So you know I've established certain safeguards to ensure our continued mutual benefit." Her smile never reached her calculating eyes as implicit threat hung between them. Drake admired her strategic mind, even as he recognized the danger she represented. "Impressive infrastructure you've built in such a short time," he replied, matching her cool demeanor. "Though I wonder if you've considered the vulnerability of building your foundation on resources you don't ultimately control." For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed Veronica's composed features before she masked it with practiced confidence. "Every resource can be leveraged, even temporary ones," she countered, revealing both her awareness of the experiment and her determination to emerge victorious regardless. Their conversation continued as a chess match, moves and countermoves discussed in business terminology that barely disguised the true power struggle underneath. Veronica had used his money not just to build wealth, but to construct leverage against the very man providing it. What truly revealed her character was discovering she had purchased controlling interest in the children's shelter, where Maria volunteered, not out of compassion, but because she had identified it as one of Drake's money laundering operations. She was dismantling his criminal enterprises piece by piece. When confronted with this knowledge, Veronica didn't deny her intentions. "Business is about identifying inefficiencies," she explained without remorse. "Your criminal operations are inefficient compared to legitimate businesses with proper structure. I'm simply improving the model." Her cold pragmatism extended to people as well as profits. She had hired away 3 of Drake's most talented lieutenants, offering them clean records and comparable salaries in her legitimate enterprises. She wasn't just building a rival organization, she was systematically gutting his from within. "You should consider me a worthy successor, rather than a threat," Veronica proposed as their meeting concluded, her ambition finally revealed in full. "I can transform your organization into something untouchable by law enforcement, while maintaining profitability. The old ways of our business are becoming obsolete." Drake nodded thoughtfully, neither accepting nor rejecting her proposal as she departed. Her approach had been brilliant in execution but fundamentally flawed in understanding. She had failed to grasp that his experiment wasn't about business acumen or empire building, but something far more essential. Later that evening, as Drake reviewed Veronica's file, he noted how her purchases revealed intelligence without wisdom, strategy without vision, ambition without purpose. She had built an impressive structure with no foundation beyond self-interest, a mirror image of his own organization without its core purpose. Do you think Veronica's strategic approach to wealth demonstrates greater character than Clarissa's social climbing, or just a different form of self-interest? Drake pondered this question as he prepared to evaluate his third candidate, the path to his true successor still unclear. Jasmine's vendetta required no personal observation. Her intentions toward Drake were transparent in every transaction made with the black card. She had orchestrated a campaign to systematically undermine his operation, purchasing loyalty from his associates and information from his enemies. Unlike the other women, who at least maintained pretenses, Jasmine had declared open war, using his own resources to fund her revenge. Security footage showed her toasting his downfall at a dinner with 3 rival family heads, promising them territories she had no authority to give. What made her approach particularly dangerous was how she leveraged intimate knowledge gained during their relationship. She knew his routines, his weaknesses, the pressure points of his organization that even his closest associates might miss. The black card had merely provided ammunition for her existing agenda. Drake watched through surveillance as she entered the private office of Police Commissioner Hammond, emerging 2 hours later with the satisfied smile of someone who had just purchased significant influence. By evening, 2 of Drake's warehouses had been raided, operations disrupted with surgical precision. "She's turning your captains against you," reported his security chief, displaying footage of Jasmine meeting with Paolo, Drake's longest-serving lieutenant, offering triple salary and immunity deals through her new contacts in federal law enforcement. 3 have already accepted. The betrayal stung more than Drake expected, though he maintained his composed exterior. Jasmine had always been passionate, even during their relationship, but he'd underestimated how completely that passion could transform into focused hatred once directed against him. Her most audacious move came when she purchased the restaurant where they had first met, converting it into a private club where his enemies gathered to coordinate their attacks against his territory. The symbolism wasn't subtle. She was systematically destroying everything that had once meant something to them both. What Drake hadn't anticipated was Jasmine approaching Maria, attempting to recruit the Maid as an inside source with promises of wealth and protection. The surveillance footage of this encounter proved most revealing of all. Maria's gentle but firm rejection of the offer, despite escalating bribes. "I don't know what game Mr. Salvati is playing with these cards," Maria had told Jasmine, "but I won't be part of hurting anyone, not even him." Her loyalty wasn't to Drake personally, but to her own principles, a distinction that fascinated him as he reviewed the recorded conversation. Jasmine's response had been revealing as well. First incredulity, then anger, finally threatening Maria with vague consequences once she took over Drake's organization. The Maid had simply walked away, returning to her volunteer work at the children's shelter, without apparent concern for Jasmine's threats. When Drake's security team suggested eliminating Jasmine before her vendetta caused irreparable damage, he found himself oddly reluctant. "Continue monitoring, but no direct action," he ordered, surprising his chief. "The experiment isn't complete." Something was shifting in his approach, though he couldn't articulate it yet. That night, Jasmine made her boldest move, hiring a team of hackers to breach Drake's security systems, accessing files documenting decades of criminal activities. She delivered copies to 3 news outlets along with evidence of corruption in city government tied to Drake's operations. As dawn broke and Drake assessed the potential fallout from this breach, an unexpected development caught him off guard. Maria arrived at her usual early hour to clean his penthouse, despite the chaos unfolding around them. "Good morning, Mr. Salvati," she greeted him simply, as though nothing had changed. "The world's falling apart around us, and you're here to dust my shelves?" Drake found himself asking, genuine curiosity breaking through his carefully maintained control. Maria's response, a gentle smile and "someone should keep things in order, especially during difficult times," struck him with unexpected force. Do you think Drake is beginning to see something in Maria that's changing his perspective on power and loyalty? The contrast between Jasmine's vengeful destruction and Maria's steady presence was becoming impossible to ignore as the experiment approached its final phase. As his empire faced threats from all sides, Drake found himself increasingly intrigued by Maria's quiet choices. Unlike the other women who announced their intentions through extravagant displays, Maria's use of the black card revealed itself through whispers from the community. Children receiving life-saving treatments, families finding homes, neighborhoods transforming. One morning, Drake followed her from a distance, watching as she visited a previously abandoned building now bustling with activity. The sign above the door read, "Second Chance Community Center," a place where former addicts received job training, homeless families found temporary shelter, and at-risk youth learned skills beyond street survival. What struck Drake most was how Maria moved through the space, not as a benefactor expecting gratitude, but as a member of the community, rolling up her sleeves to serve food, listening to problems, offering hugs and practical solutions with equal grace. The black card had purchased the building, but her humanity animated it. "Who is she?" Drake asked his chief of security later that day, reviewing files that contained little more than basic employment information. Maria had worked for his household for nearly 2 years, yet remained essentially unknown. A ghost who cleaned his spaces and apparently transformed his city. His investigation revealed a history both ordinary and extraordinary. Parents who had immigrated decades ago, working multiple jobs to provide opportunities for their daughter. Maria's nursing studies abandoned when her father fell ill. Years spent supporting her family through multiple service jobs before arriving at his door. What the file couldn't explain was the profound impact she had created with resources that had corrupted the others. Where Clarissa had built monuments to her ego, Veronica had constructed power structures, and Jasmine had funded destruction, Maria had quietly seeded hope throughout the community. Drake decided to witness her work firsthand, disguising himself as a volunteer at the community center. He arrived to find Maria teaching young children to read, her patience evident as she guided small fingers across pages, celebrating each small victory with genuine joy that transformed her already beautiful face. During lunch preparation, Drake found himself working alongside her, chopping vegetables as she prepared a massive pot of soup. "Everyone deserves a good meal and a second chance," she explained when he questioned the center's open-door policy. "The past doesn't have to define anyone's future." The irony of her words wasn't lost on him. A mafia boss whose entire empire was built on exploiting those with no second chances, disguised as a volunteer, receiving wisdom from his maid. Something shifted in Drake's perspective as he watched her treat everyone with the same dignity, from homeless addicts to the children of his associates. Later that afternoon, he observed as Maria used the black card to purchase medical equipment for an elderly man who had been denied insurance coverage. "This isn't charity," she told the man gently. "This is community. Today you receive help. Tomorrow you'll help someone else in your own way." What truly stunned Drake was discovering that Maria had been quietly using her own modest salary to help others long before receiving his black card. Bank records showed consistent donations to various causes, often leaving her with barely enough for necessities, yet her file showed no financial distress or complaints. As evening approached, Drake watched Maria visit a young boy in the hospital, the same child whose expensive cancer treatment she had funded. She brought no gifts beyond her presence, reading stories until the exhausted child fell asleep, then sitting with his equally exhausted parents, offering silent support. "You've done so much for us," the boy's mother whispered, tears streaming down her face. "How can we ever repay you?" Maria's response lodged itself in Drake's mind, challenging everything he had built his empire upon. "By being this generous with someone else when your time of need has passed." The concept seemed foreign to Drake's transactional worldview. Kindness without expectation of return, generosity as a continuous circle rather than a balance sheet of debts and payments. Maria's use of unlimited wealth had revealed something about the nature of true power that had eluded him his entire life. 3 days before the experiment's conclusion, disaster struck as Jasmine's machinations bore fruit. Federal agents raided Drake's legitimate businesses, while rival organizations launched coordinated attacks on his territories. His carefully constructed empire began crumbling as allies deserted and enemies circled. From his secure penthouse, Drake watched news reports of his businesses being seized, his associates arrested, his reputation in tatters, years of criminal enterprise exposed in a matter of hours, all orchestrated by a woman whose heart he had broken and whose vengeance he had underestimated. Instead of fleeing, Maria calmly made coffee and listened as Drake, in a moment of unexpected vulnerability, explained the experiment with the black cards. "I was looking for someone who could handle power responsibly," he admitted, Someone worthy of taking over when I step aside. And did you find what you were looking for? Maria asked, her gentle question penetrating deeper than she could know. Drake showed her the surveillance footage of all 4 women, Clarissa's social tyranny, Veronica's cold ambition, Jasmine's destructive revenge, and Maria's own quiet revolution of compassion. What happened next changed everything. Maria reached into her modest handbag and placed her black card on the table between them. I've learned that giving this back is more powerful than keeping it, she explained. True wealth isn't in unlimited resources, but in knowing when you have enough. Before Drake could respond, his security chief burst in with urgent news. The FBI had Maria's name on their target list, believing she was laundering money through her community projects. The irony was bitter. The only person using the card for good was now endangered by association with him. Why is she on their list? Drake demanded, unexpected protective instinct surging through him. The answer shook his carefully constructed worldview. Maria was not just his maid, but the daughter of a man whose life Drake had destroyed decades ago in his rise to power. Her father had been Drake's first mentor in the organization, a man who advocated for community investment rather than exploitation. When leadership changed hands, Drake had betrayed his mentor to curry favor with the new regime, resulting in the man's imprisonment and the family's financial ruin. You knew who I was all along, Drake realized, searching Maria's face for the hatred he deserved, but finding only calm resolve. You sought employment in my home deliberately. The implications staggered him. Every cleaned room, every quiet service had been performed by someone he had grievously wronged. Maria nodded, finally revealing the full truth. I came seeking answers, maybe even revenge, she admitted. But watching you every day, seeing the emptiness behind your power, I found something unexpected. Pity. The black card simply gave me the chance to show you a different path. Outside, sirens wailed closer as federal agents surrounded the building. Drake's empire was collapsing, his freedom measured in minutes rather than decades. Yet in this moment of destruction, he felt strangely liberated, as though Maria had already freed him from a prison he hadn't recognized. They'll arrest you too, Drake warned, already formulating an escape plan to save her from consequences meant for him. Everything you've built with the card will be investigated, dismantled, tainted by association with me. The thought of her good works being destroyed disturbed him more than his own downfall. Maria's response revealed wisdom beyond her years. What I've built isn't in buildings or programs, but in people who've been given second chances, that can't be seized or frozen or dismantled. She took his hand, offering compassion he had never shown to others, including you, if you're willing to make different choices now. In that moment, Drake saw clearly what the experiment had truly revealed. Not just the character of 4 women tested by unlimited resources, but the poverty of his own soul despite his material wealth. Would he choose differently with whatever time remained, or cling to the power that had ultimately failed him? As federal agents breached the lower floors of the building, Drake made a decision that would rewrite his legacy. I have accounts they don't know about, he told Maria urgently. Enough to fund your work for decades if properly managed. He quickly transferred access codes to a secure device, pressing it into her hands. I won't take blood money, Maria protested, trying to return the device, but Drake shook his head. It's not a gift. It's restitution. For your father. For everyone I've harmed. For the first time in decades, he spoke with complete honesty. No calculation behind his words. Use it better than I did. The elevator security alert chimed. Agents would reach the penthouse within minutes. Drake straightened his tie, a strange calm settling over him as he prepared to face consequences long overdue. One last thing, he said, retrieving a hidden file from his safe. Your father's case. Everything needed to clear his name. Maria's eyes widened as she accepted the file. Decades of injustice potentially undone in a single gesture. Why now? She asked, searching his face for deception but finding only regret for wasted years. Why give up everything you've built? The answer surprised them both with its simple truth. Because you've shown me something more valuable, Drake replied, nodding toward the window where dawn broke over the city. His city, but somehow different through this new perspective. Not an empire built on fear, but a community built on second chances. I'd like to see what that looks like, even from a cell. With seconds remaining before the inevitable arrest, Drake made one final decision. He recorded a confession exonerating Maria completely, explaining she had unknowingly been used in his scheme. Your work is too important to be destroyed with me, he insisted, sending the recording to his lawyer. When agents burst through the door, they found Drake Salvati sitting calmly at his desk, hands folded, ready to surrender. Maria they discovered in the kitchen, seemingly preparing coffee for her employer, the perfect image of an innocent worker caught in circumstances beyond her understanding. 6 months later, Maria visited Drake in the federal detention center where he awaited trial. The man who greeted her bore little resemblance to the Mafia boss who had once ruled the city. Designer suits replaced by prison khakis, luxury penthouse traded for a cell shared with 3 others. "The community center is thriving," she told him, sharing photos of smiling children and recovering adults finding their way back from rock bottom. "We've opened 3 more across the city, focusing on neighborhoods your organization once exploited." There was no accusation in her voice, only progress reports. "Home," Maria answered, eyes bright with contained emotion. "The exoneration came through last month. He's helping with the centers, actually. Says it gives purpose to the years lost." She hesitated before adding, "He's willing to visit if you want. Says everyone deserves the chance to make amends." The concept of forgiveness remained foreign to Drake, especially from those he had most grievously wronged. In the brutal world he had inhabited, vengeance was the only expected response to betrayal. Jasmine had demonstrated this principle perfectly, while Maria and her father defied every rule he had lived by. "The experiment with the black cards," Drake said quietly, meeting Maria's gaze directly. "I thought I was testing your character, but you were revealing mine all along." The irony wasn't lost on him, searching for a worthy successor, only to discover his own unworthiness through her example. Maria smiled, her compassion neither naive nor weak, but a strength Drake was only beginning to understand. "The other women?" she asked. "Have you heard what happened to them?" She knew parts of the story but wanted his perspective on the experiment's ultimate conclusion. "Clarissa's back where she started, broke and abandoned by the friends she bought," Drake replied. "Veronica's legal practice is thriving, though the authorities are watching her closely. And Jasmine," he paused, still processing the most surprising outcome. "Jasmine visited last week, finally ready to move beyond revenge." What Drake didn't share was how thoroughly Maria's example had transformed his understanding of legacy. His empire had been built on exploitation and fear, destined to collapse once his control faltered. Maria had shown him how to build something that grew stronger through sharing rather than hoarding power. As their visit ended, Drake asked the question that had haunted him since his arrest. "If you had known from the beginning that the black card was a test, would your choices have been different?" The answer would determine whether her compassion had been strategy or genuine character. Maria considered the question seriously before responding. The money was never the point. It was what it revealed about priorities. Her smile held no judgment, only quiet certainty. "We all have resources: time, attention, skills, money, and how we use them shows who we truly are, with or without a black card." As Maria left, promising to return next month, Drake returned to his cell with a profound sense of peace that had eluded him, even at the height of his power. The experiment had failed in its original purpose, but succeeded beyond imagination in its true one, teaching a man who had everything that he had understood nothing about real wealth. Thank you all for following this story to the end. If you enjoyed it, please write in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video, as your support is essential for me to continue creating content here. What would you have done with an unlimited black card?